All right, let's dive into this.
I would.
Superhero deaths and resurrections.
This is good.
You seem really fascinated by this. You've
Yeah.
been sending in tons of notes and articles and research, and I think it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah.
It's not just about how these heroes come back, it's the why.
Right.
What does it all mean?
Exactly.
This whole revolving door of death.
Yeah, and I think it really gets at some of our deepest desires.
Yeah.
You know, the longing for hope, the struggle against
Right.
the inevitable, maybe even a bit of wish fulfillment.
I mean, who hasn't fantasized about defying death?
Right.
But
Yeah.
I think the thing that's so interesting to me is just the sheer number of times
It's unbelievable.
these heroes bite the dust and then come
They're
back.
crazy.
I mean, Superman,
Oh, yeah.
the iconic showdown with Doomsday,
Of course.
back.
He's back.
Captain America,
Yep.
Steve Rogers himself, shot, lost in time.
Somehow reclaims his life and shield.
I know.
And then there's Jean Grey.
Oh my gosh, Jean Grey. She's like the poster child for this.
With the Phoenix Force?
Yeah.
She's got a timeshare in the afterlife.
That's a great way to put it.
It makes me wonder, do these constant comebacks
Yeah, are we
cheapen the stakes?
are we losing the impact of death?
Like, if death is never really the end,
right.
does it lose its oomph?
Does it?
But then I think about those scenes,
Right.
like Spider-Man
Oh, yeah.
disintegrating in Infinity War,
Uh-huh.
or Iron Man's sacrifice in Endgame.
Totally.
I mean, I was wrecked
Oh, yeah.
emotionally.
For sure.
Even knowing that the MCU
Right.
loves a good resurrection,
Mm-hmm.
those deaths felt so meaningful.
I think it's because they served a purpose. It wasn't just shock value.
Right.
Like they had.
Push the narrative
Yeah.
in new
I
directions.
think had a profound impact on the other characters.
Huge impact.
And they gave the audience this emotional catharsis.
I agree. Think about Superman's death fighting Doomsday.
Oh.
Vision's heartbreaking demise.
Yeah.
Like those deaths.
They felt earned.
They did.
There were consequences.
Even if temporary.
So maybe it's not about
Right.
whether a character comes back.
Yeah.
It's how their death,
it's how
even a
it
temporary one,
shapes the story.
shapes the story
The characters.
and the characters who live on.
I like that living on.
Speaking of living on,
Okay.
you brought up legacy characters.
Yes.
Where it's not the person,
Right.
it's the mantle that endured.
The Manta.
The Flash Green
Yeah.
Lantern.
Great example.
Multiple people have held the same title.
Yeah, it's such
What does that tell us?
it's such a brilliant way to think about legacy
Right.
and how these ideas
Yeah.
can have a lasting impact.
Not just the individual.
Right. It's like passing a torch.
Right.
Each new generation
Bringing their own spin on it.
bringing their own spin.
But honoring those core ideals.
Yeah. Continuity and evolution.
It's funny when you think about how some of these legacy characters came to be.
Uh-huh.
Like, would we even have Miles Morales
Right.
if not for the tragic loss of Peter Parker
That's so true.
in his universe?
Yeah, it's this.
It's like this paradox.
Yeah.
Death creates space for new life,
Yes.
for new stories.
And it's not just in superhero narratives.
Right?
I mean, look at real-world legends and myths.
Oh, yeah.
Often revolve around sacrifice and rebirth.
Totally.
It seems like a story.
It's like built into us.
We're drawn to it.
This narrative of overcoming death,
Yeah.
finding meaning in loss,
Absolutely.
carrying on a legacy.
I agree.
But these superhero stories,
Yeah.
they're not just escapist fantasies.
Right.
They reflect our anxieties.
They reflect the anxieties and the values
and values
of the time.
of the time.
The
Dude,
great, like, think about the rise of the grim and gritty anti-hero
yes.
in the 90s.
When there was this growing cynicism towards authority figures,
Towards
institutions,
Absolutely.
these superheroes who were once seen as beacons of hope were suddenly flawed
Totally.
and conflicted.
And operating in shades of gray.
It's like the world felt less black and white,
Yes,
and our heroes started to reflect that.
exactly.
And it's still happening today.
It is.
Like The Boys,
Yeah.
WandaVision,
Great examples.
these classic heroes are being reimagined
Reimagined through a modern lens.
through a modern lens.
Thinking about trauma and mental health.
And power.
The nature of power.
It's wild how these fictional characters act as this mirror,
They do.
reflecting our hopes and fears back at us.
Right.
But
Yeah.
even in a world where death is often a revolving door, some losses feel permanent and game-changing.
They do.
You mentioned Gwen Stacy's death in The Night Gwen Stacy Died.
I did.
That whiplash detail.
Yeah. That story was a turning point.
Let's talk about a brutal end.
It was a turning point for Spider-Man, but also for comics in general.
Right.
I think it marked this shift.
Like these young sidekicks.
Right.
They weren't untouchable.
Not anymore.
That whiplash detail.
Yes.
For those who don't know,
It refers to the way she died.
it wasn't just the fall.
Right.
It was the sudden stop.
The sudden stop at the end of the rope.
That broke her neck.
That's right.
Gruesome.
It was gruesome.
And then there's the death of Jason Todd.
Oh,
A
yeah.
second Robin.
A death in the family.
That's in the
A
family.
good one.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the fans
The fans.
gotta decide his fate.
That's right. DC Comics had a phone-in poll.
Wow.
Readers got to vote
No way.
whether Jason Todd would live or die.
At the hands of the Joker.
That's right.
I mean, that is
That's blurring the lines
Don't be
between
frank.
fiction and reality.
highlighting the power
It
Sevens can have.
shaping the narratives.
Yeah. And the fans spoke.
They did.
They chose death.
Death.
Jason Todd met a gruesome end.
Gruesome.
It sent ripples
It did.
through the Batman mythos.
For sure.
But even with these
Right.
shocking and permanent deaths,
Yeah.
there's often this sense that death is never truly the end.
Not in comics?
In the world of comics.
It seems like even in the face of the most definitive losses,
Yeah.
there's this glimmer of hope.
There's always a chance.
A chance for resurrection.
Or a reimagining.
Yeah.
And then there's the death of the original Captain Marvel.
Yes.
Marvel.
This one's unique.
Unique and groundbreaking.
Why was his death so different?
He didn't die in a blaze of glory.
Right.
You know, no big battle, no saving the universe.
He didn't go out fighting some cosmic entity?
He died from cancer.
Wow.
A slow, agonizing death.
Really mirroring a human experience.
Very human.
That must have been a bold choice for a comic book back then.
Oh, it was.
Early 80s. The graphic novel, The Death of Captain Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
It's considered a landmark work.
For how it handled death?
It was mature. It was introspective.
Showing that.
It showed that even the most powerful heroes are vulnerable to the realities of life and loss.
So we've got heroes dying and returning.
We do.
Mantles being passed down.
Yes.
Deaths that shatter the status quo.
Uh-huh.
And even heroes facing a very human end.
Yeah, it seems like death plays so many roles
It does.
in these stories.
Shaping the characters,
And
the
yes,
narratives, even reflecting our own cultural anxieties.
I agree.
It's this complexity that makes these stories so compelling.
Compelling, and I think they offer us a safe space
Yeah.
to explore these feelings
To confront our fears.
about mortality,
Right.
about loss,
Right.
and maybe even find a little bit of solace
Yeah.
in the idea that even if we fall,
Mm-hmm.
something good might rise from the ashes.
It's like a way to process these big existential questions. But I also think it's about finding meaning in it.
Finding meaning.
Seeing how loss
Mhm.
can lead to growth.
To change to the birth of something new.
Absolutely.
I mean, think about the heroes that have taken up mantles
Yeah.
after the death of their predecessors.
Right.
They carry that weight,
They do.
that responsibility,
It fuels their fight.
and they use it to make their mark on the world.
It was like they're saying, you may be gone,
Right.
but you won't be forgotten.
Your sacrifice
Yeah.
will fuel our fight.
Powerful message.
It's powerful, and I think it resonates with us on such a primal level.
We all carry the legacies of those who came before us.
We do.
Their stories.
Their struggles.
Their triumphs.
Their triumphs shape who we are.
They shape who we are.
And that's maybe the real magic
Mhm.
of superhero stories.
The magic.
They remind us that death,
Uh-huh.
while inevitable,
Well, inevitable doesn't have to be the end.
doesn't have to be the end.
It can be a catalyst.
A catalyst
for transformation.
for rebirth,
For a
continuation of a story
For the continuation.
that's bigger than any one individual.
It's a beautiful and complex concept.
It is.
And one that comic book writers have
Mhm.
explored in countless ways.
In countless ways.
And it's something we all grapple with,
I think so.
whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, you mentioned Crisis on Infinite Earths earlier.
Oh, yeah.
That was a prime example
For those who don't know.
of how death
Yeah.
can reshape a whole universe.
Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah,
This major DC Comics event.
major event.
Multiple Earths collided.
Heroes died.
Heroes died.
Reality was torn apart.
It was a huge reset button
Huge reset button
for DC Comics.
to streamline their continuity
Yeah.
and introduce new possibilities.
New possibilities for storytelling.
And while it was traumatic,
It was.
It ultimately led to a rebirth,
Right.
a new era.
For the DC universe,
Right.
a reminder that even in the face of
Seemingly insurmountable loss. There's always potential.
Always potential.
Renewal and growth.
Like Phoenix rising.
Felt like a phoenix.
From the ashes.
From the ashes.
But even with all these grand cosmic examples,
yeah,
you highlighted Captain Marvel's death as being particularly unique and impactful. You mentioned that he didn't die in battle.
He died from cancer.
Right.
It brought the concept of death down to a human level.
A very human level.
It wasn't about flashy battles or cosmic threats.
Yeah.
It was about facing a very real illness.
And the way it was handled?
The graphic novel, The Death of Captain Marvel.
Right.
Incredibly powerful.
I bet.
And moving.
I can imagine it must have resonated.
It did.
With readers.
In a much more personal way. Because it reminded us.
Yeah.
That even the strongest among us are vulnerable to the realities of life and loss.
So you've got these epic battles against cosmic forces.
Yeah.
Heroes sacrificing themselves to save the world.
Yeah.
And then you have this quiet, introspective story about a hero facing his mortality.
It's a testament to the range and depth
of these narratives.
Of these superhero narratives. And it speaks to the power of storytelling.
To help us process difficult emotions. To explore complex themes.
Yes.
And ultimately find meaning. In these dark experiences.
Exactly.
But it's not just about processing death.
Right.
It's about what comes after.
It's about what comes out.
The legacy that's left behind.
The legacy.
The impact that ripples outward.
It ripples.
And how those who are gone continue to shape the world.
That's a perfect segue.
You mention how Marvel's death paved the way. For Carol Danvers. To become Captain Marvel. And this is a whole other layer to this conversation. The idea that even in death, these heroes can inspire and shape the world around them. It's like their stories become woven into the fabric of the universe. Influencing future generations. Inspiring new heroes to rise up. And carry the torch.
It's a beautiful testament to the power of legacy.
It really is.
And the idea that our actions and our values and the stories we tell can have this ripple effect that extends far beyond
our lifetime.
Our lifetimes.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how Marvel's death kind of paved the way for Carol Danvers to become Captain Marvel.
Right.
You know, it was tragic, but it allowed for a new hero to emerge.
Totally.
And redefine that legacy of the Captain Marvel name.
It really highlights how death in these stories, it's not always like a full stop. It's a comma.
It's like
maybe an ellipsis.
Yeah, or an ellipsis.
It's creating this space for new beginnings.
Yes.
For new interpretations of these familiar ideas.
Absolutely.
For a whole new generation of heroes.
A new generation
to rise up.
I think it also speaks to this human desire for continuity. You know, those core values, those ideals, they endure. Even as individuals pass on.
Right, like we see this.
Like it's how we find comfort.
In the real world, too.
In rituals.
Yeah.
In passing down traditions through generations.
It connects us to something larger than ourselves.
It does.
And, you know, it makes me think about how some of these legacy characters have evolved the original concept in really interesting ways.
For sure.
Like Miles Morales as Spider-Man.
I was going to say Miles Morales.
He's not just a replacement for Peter Parker.
He's not just a replacement. Right. He brings his own.
He's got his own thing going on.
He does.
Own unique experiences, cultural background, even powers to the role.
He embodies the spirit of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
While also carving out his own path.
He really does.
And that's what makes legacy characters so compelling.
They pay homage to the past.
They do.
But they also push the boundaries.
Push the boundaries.
What was possible.
So we've got these different ways death plays out.
We do.
Right, you got the revolving door.
Of
resurrection.
Passing the torch.
Passing the torch. Through legacy characters.
Right.
And then those truly permanent losses.
Permanent ones?
That change the game forever.
What does this tell us?
Right.
About our own
relationship.
About our own relationship.
With death.
Why are we so drawn to these stories?
The great question.
Of heroes cheating death.
Maybe it's because deep down.
Like, we all grapple with our mortality.
We all grapple with our own mortality.
Right. We yearn for this hope.
We yearn for hope.
This sense that even in the face of loss, something endures.
Something endures, I think, superhero stories.
But, like, give us this safe space.
They offer a safe space.
To explore those feelings.
To explore those feelings.
To confront our fears.
To confront our fears.
To find a little solace.
And maybe even find a little bit of solace.
In the idea that even if we fall,
right,
something good might rise.
Something good might rise.
From the ashes.
From the ashes.
It's a way to process.
I think so.
These big existential questions.
Without the real world stakes.
But I also think it goes beyond just wanting to escape death.
Beyond escape.
It's about finding meaning in it.
Finding meaning.
Seeing how even the most devastating losses can lead to growth, to change, to the birth of something new.
Absolutely. Think about the heroes who have taken up the mantles after their predecessors have died.
They carry that weight.
They do.
That responsibility. And they use
to forge their own paths.
To make their mark.
To make their own mark on the world.
It's a testament to the power of inspiration.
It's like they're saying, you may be gone, but you won't be forgotten.
You won't be forgotten.
Your sacrifice will fuel our fight.
Your sacrifice will fuel our fight.
And it resonates.
It resonates.
On such a deep level.
On a primal level.
We all carry the legacies of those who came before us.
We do.
Their stories.
Their stories. Their struggles.
Their struggles.
Their triumphs.
They shape who we are.
They shape who we are.
Even if we never met them.
And that's the magic of superhero stories.
I think so.
They remind us that death, while inevitable, doesn't have to be the end.
It doesn't have to be the end.
It can be this catalyst.
A catalyst.
For transformation, for rebirth.
For rebirth.
For the continuation.
For the continuation.
Of a story that's bigger than any one individual.
Bigger than any one of us.
And, you know, it's a beautiful and complex concept.
It is.
And one that comic book writers have explored in so many ways.
Countless ways over the years.
And it's something we all grapple with.
I think so.
You know, whether we're conscious of it or not.
You mentioned Crisis on Infinite Earths earlier.
Yeah.
That event was a prime example of how death, even on a massive scale, can reshape an entire universe.
Oh, totally.
I mean, for those who might not be familiar.
Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah. This was a major DC Comics event.
Right.
Multiple Earths collided.
Heroes died.
Heroes died. The fabric of reality.
Torn apart.
Torn apart.
It was like...
It was a huge reset button.
A giant reset button.
For DC
Comics.
To kind of streamline their continuity.
Yeah.
Introduce new possibilities.
It was traumatic.
It was traumatic.
But it ultimately led to a rebirth.
But it led to a rebirth.
Right.
A new era.
A new era for the DC universe.
Right. It's a reminder that...
Even in the face of...
This
seemingly insurmountable loss. There's always the potential.
Always potential.
For renewal and growth. Like a phoenix. Rising from the ash. But even with all these grand cosmic examples, you flagged the death of Captain Marvel as being particularly
unique
and impactful. Because he didn't die in battle.
He did not. He died from cancer.
Right. And that must have been a really different experience.
It was a different experience
for readers at the time.
Because it brought the concept of death down to a very human level.
Right. It wasn't
about these flashy battles. Or cosmic threats.
It was about this.
It was about facing.
Very real and relatable illness.
A very real illness.
And you know the way it was handled in the graphic novel?
In The Death of Captain Marvel.
The Death of Captain Marvel.
It was so powerful. And so moving.
I can imagine.
It must have.
It must have resonated with readers in a much more...
personal way.
In a very personal way.
Because it was about a hero facing his mortality.
Yes.
So we've got these epic battles. God's cosmic forces. We got heroes sacrificing themselves. To save the world. And then this quiet.
And then we have this quiet.
Introspective story.
About
a hero facing his own mortality.
It's a testament to the range.
It really is.
And the depth.
The range and the depth.
Of these superhero narratives. And it speaks to the power.
And the power
of storytelling.
To
help us process these difficult emotions.
Right, to help us process difficult emotions.
And to ultimately
And to ultimately
find meaning
in even the darkest of experiences.
Right. It's not just about processing death.
It's not just about processing death.
It's about exploring what comes after.
It's about what comes after.
The legacy.
The legacy.
That's left behind.
That's left behind.
The impact.
It ripples outward.
The ripples.
And the ways in which those who are gone continue to shape the world.
That's a perfect segue.
You mentioned how Mar-Vell's death paved the way for Carol Danvers.
Paved the way.
To become Captain Marvel.
You become Captain Marvel.
And this is a whole other layer.
It is a whole other layer.
To this death and resurrection conversation.
You see, the conversation.
Right,
the idea that
even in death.
These
heroes can inspire and shape the world around them.
And shape the world. It's like their stories.
Their stories become woven into the fabric of the universe.
Into the fabric of the universe.
Influencing future generations.
Influencing future generations.
Inspiring new heroes to rise up.
Inspiring new heroes.
And carry the torch. It's a beautiful testament to the enduring power of legacy.
It really is.
And this idea that our actions, our values, the stories we tell can have this ripple effect that extends far beyond
our lifetimes.
Our lifetimes.
It's amazing to think about how these characters, even in death, can inspire spark change. Almost like their energy doesn't just disappear.
Right.
It transforms. It takes on new forms.
It's like that old saying.
Right.
Energy cannot be created or destroyed.
Right.
Only transformed.
It's like we're seeing that.
And we see
play out in these superhero narratives.
In these stories.
The death of a hero isn't the end.
Right.
It's a catalyst.
It's a catalyst for something new.
Makes you wonder, what kind of legacy do we want to leave behind?
That's a good question.
What stories will people tell about us?
Right.
What impact will our actions have?
It's a powerful question.
On the world long after we're gone. And I think these superhero stories give us this framework.
A framework?
For thinking about.
Our own lives and legacies.
Our own lives and legacies.
They remind us that even small acts of courage, kindness, creativity can have this ripple effect.
That extends far beyond.
Our immediate circle. It's funny how we talk about death as this end. But in these stories, it's just the beginning of something else.
Of something new.
A new chapter. A new arc. A chance for new heroes to rise up.
A new generation.
And face the challenges of their time.
It's a fascinating paradox.
It is. Death, the ultimate cessation.
The ultimate cessation.
Becoming this catalyst for transformation and growth.
And transformation.
And that's a powerful message.
It's powerful.
Especially in a world where loss is inevitable. Right, like it's telling us that.
Even in those darkest moments.
Right.
When we're faced with the unimaginable, there's still this potential for something new, something better.
Something better.
To rise from the ashes.
And
maybe that's why these stories resonate so deeply.
I think so.
They offer a glimpse of hope.
A glimpse of hope.
A flicker of light. In the face of darkness.
They remind us.
Right.
That even though we lose people we love. Their stories continue.
Right.
Woven into the fabric of our own lives.
It's about finding meaning. Finding purpose. Carrying those legacies forward. In a way that honors the past. But embraces the future. Yeah, it's really well said.
And I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I think so too.
Because ultimately, the conversation about death and legacy, it's a deeply personal one.
It is.
It's about reflecting on our own experiences.
Our own values.
The
stories that have shaped who we are. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we encourage you to keep exploring these themes. Think about the heroes who have inspired you. The stories that have moved you. And the ways in which those narratives have helped you make sense of your own world. Because that's what it's all about.
That's what great storytelling is all about.
Connecting with something larger than ourselves. Finding meaning
in this shared human experience.
And discovering those sparks of hope and resilience.
To
help us navigate the complexities of life.
To help us navigate
loss.
everything in between. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
And until next time.
Until next time.
Keep exploring, keep questioning.
Keep exploring, and keep finding those stories that speak to your soul.
Absolutely.